Texas Longhorns up next. Texas has finally turned into a perennial national title contender. So many people keep saying, Texas is back, Texas is back. They were never back until the last 2 years, really, under Steve Sarkisian. They have now made back-to-back college football playoff semifinals. The first time since 2008 and 2009 that the Longhorns have finished in the top 15 of the AP poll in consecutive years. And they were in the top 4 of the AP poll in both of the last 2 years, too. Quinn Ewers is gone, and it is finally Arch Manning time now down there at Texas. The next in line to his family's quarterback dynasty has a lot of hype on him right now. And he looked pretty good last year in relief of Quinn Ewers, who went down with an injury, had an 88 PFF grade in 2 starts last year. But Dawn, brand new offensive line in front of him right now. Still has a top 10 running back unit, still has a top 10 receiving core to rely on. And as exciting as Arch Manning is, the story of this team last year and the story of this team this upcoming year too, that defense is freaking loaded, man. And it should be, once again, one of the best defenses in college football.
Boy, what Pete Kwiatkowski has on this defense, and even with the pieces that they lost over the last 2 years, really, but Colin Simmons coming back, Trey Moore, Anthony Hill, Malik Muhammad, Michael Taff, and they've got a boatload of talent coming in behind those guys. This is the reason, first and foremost, even more so than having a Manning at quarterback, where you go, okay, that's an elite football team. They had the highest coverage grade in the country last year. They were the only team that held Jeremiah Smith down in that playoff game. They didn't lose that game because of their defense. They only gave up 21 to Ohio State defensively, and then you had the Jack Sawyer scoop and score. But I think when you look at Texas, first and foremost, I know Manning's going to get all the cameras and spotlight and flash, but it's their defense that makes them elite. This is no question a top 5 defense in the country with several possible first-round talents. That's where you look first when you look at the success of this Texas Longhorn team, and then they're going to try to get the offense catching up to that with Manning. And you're right, it's a very young offense, but if they are able to catch up to this defense in a matter of time, in time for SEC, hardcore competition there as they're trying to get in the SEC title game again, then you're talking about a national title contender.
Absolutely. Yeah, Texas, one of 4 schools in America, as a top 10 defensive line, linebacker unit, and secondary in my rankings. In fact, the number 1 linebacker unit and the number 1 secondary in my rankings too. And just to kind of spoil a future article coming out on PFF.com, I'm ranking the top 10 offenses and top 10 defenses in college football. Texas has the number 2 defense in the country for me, behind Alabama. So loaded defense for Texas going
ahead
next
of
year.
You put them ahead of Clemson?
I did.
Oh, wow.
I know,
okay.
It's tough.
All right, we'll have that argument later. But
yeah.
Wow, I was surprised you put them ahead of Clemson's darn good, too.
Now, listen, Texas last year had one of the best defenses in college football, and they should once again have that this year. What they also had last year, Dalton, was arguably the best offensive line in college football, but they lost a lot from that offensive line from last year. 4 of the 5 starters are gone, and Kelvin Banks Jr., Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, and Cameron Williams. Kelvin Banks, one of the best tackles in the country, the number 9 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. They do have some intriguing talent replacing them, especially Trevor Gooseby, who's getting a lot of hype right now for the 2026 NFL Draft, and Brandon Baker at tackle, who's a former 5-star recruit too. But they're pretty unproven right now. So Texas had the best O-line in the country last year, in my opinion, but they lost 4 starters from that unit. Still very talented up front, but a lot of unproven and inexperienced players up front too.
For sure. I think it's the theme of this Texas offense, and I might as well just go right into it with Arch Manning because, look, even though he's a Manning and he had 2 starts last year in place of Quinn Ewers, that's the theme is inexperience. But when he's been on the field,
yeah,
he darn well looks the part. 88 overall grade last year in limited work, a little over 200 snaps, 108 dropbacks. And I just keep going back to the best way we can put this is that he's a Manning that can run. He's accurate. His mechanics are clean. He's generally on time with the football. He goes through his progressions because you already know he's been on the whiteboard for his whole life. And he's a better athlete than either of the 2 Mannings that came before him in Peyton and Eli. And you talk about, what is it, a 67-yard touchdown run he had last year in one of those starts. So
Eli and Peyton would never dream of that, by the way.
No.
They would never dream of that.
Oh, no, hell, neither would I. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a plus athlete super accurate, can see the field well, throws on time. I just think the one thing we can point to is inexperience. I mean, the only other thing is that he had a 40 passing grade under pressure last year, but super small sample size. I mean, you're talking about, and a guy who was not getting all of the reps with the ones in the offseason. Now he is. Quinn Ewers is gone. Arch is the starter. Still probably could have made an argument to leave him in there, but it was Quinn Ewers' team. It is what it is. That's last year. This is somebody who can do everything on a football field. And again, he just has to go out there and do it week after week. But I think it's every bit justified to think about whenever he comes out being the number one overall pick. We just got to see him do it.
Trevor Sycamore, who's in the chat right now, our lead draft analyst here at PFF, he has him as the number one quarterback in next year's draft, and I agree with him.
Yeah, why not?
I think he is, and I know it's a very small sample size, and I know some people are saying how we had him number 50 in our college 50 list, our number 6 quarterback. Like, how can you put him at that high? It's like,
I mean, honestly, it's probably the least analytical thing I do in this building, but I just sit here. He's a Manning.
Yeah.
What do you want? He's a Manning he's a Manning that's an athlete.
Yeah, he got his grandpa's athleticism and his dad's athleticism too. Cooper Manning was a great receiver before he went down that neck injury. But.
Right. I mean, he's got everything. We just got to see it for 12 games instead of a handful. I mean, it's just he's Arch Manning.
All eyes. Yeah. That is the most.
Is there anybody under more pressure than Arch Manning?
No. But hey, listen, his dad. I mean, his uncles were both under immense pressure too. As you know, the sons of Archie Manning, they live up to the hype too. Who knows with Arch Manning? All we've known so far from that family is elite quarterback play, and we'll see if he can live up to that in his first year as a starter. Dawn, he's going to have a guy he's going to have as a security blanket, Jack Endries, who is, in my opinion, the second best tight end in college football going into next year. Started his career as a walk-on at California, and now is the number 2 tight end in college football. Over 1,000 receiving yards over the last 2 years. That is 6th among all tight ends over the last 2 years, and most among all returning tight ends who play for a Power 4 school in that span. Very strong hands for the position. Only dropped 1 pass in 2024. Caught 9 of his 12 contested targets too. He'll just be the security blanket for Arch Manning. They got plenty of other guys that could really push the ball downfield, like Ryan Wingo in that receiving core. But I'm a huge fan of Jack Endries, and in my opinion, he's one of the best tight ends we have in the country.
Absolutely. I mean, look, you could not find a better replacement, especially for the style player that Gunnar Helm was for this team. And only other thing I have, shout out to his dad, who's a big fan of the show.
He is?
Yeah.
Robert Endries, I think. Right?
Absolutely.
Great dude. Yeah.
So.
All right, you want to talk about our number 1 edge rusher going into next year?
Absolutely. We just had one freak in South Carolina and Dylan Stewart. Now we got Colin Simmons here at Texas. And look, this team is loaded with defensive stars, but Colin Simmons and what he did as a true freshman last year as well, just incredible stuff, right? When you're talking about an 82.5 PFF grade, a 73.4 run defense grade, that young 18.6 pressure rate as a pass rusher, just a ridiculously good freshman season. You've brought up the comps possibly even to Von Miller as that outside linebacker, just so well built and has the arsenal to him. There was a big rotation of guys on that defensive line last year, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you choose to block Colin Simmons one-on-one, I don't know what you're doing. That's all I have for it, because between him and Dylan Stewart right now, they're the 2 best pass rushers in the country. Freaks coming up as true sophomores. Simmons, just everything you could want in a stand-up outside linebacker. I mean, there's not a whole lot of flaws other than just keep getting more reps. I mean, to be a true freshman and to be the 6th most valuable edge rusher in the country, that's with some of the names in front of him, just silly. I mean, he's another one who you just go, again, this 2027 draft class, it's going to be nuts. But, I mean, the arsenal, the burst, the bend, even the ability at times, if you wanted him to drop back in cover, he's a good enough athlete. He can do it all, man. I mean, it's going to be a freaky season for him.
Mentioned him being the 6th most valuable edge rusher last year. The 5 above him were Abdul Carter, Jack Sawyer, Mike Green, Josiah Stewart, and JC Tuimoloau. All those guys are in the NFL right now.
All those guys drafted in the first. Jack Sawyer won the 4th round.
4 rounds, yeah.
And still, in my opinion, shouldn't have. But, I mean, you're talking about superstars.
And, again, Dawn and I disagree with this award, but he did win Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year over Jeremiah Smith, who had arguably the best freshman season of all time. So even if there's the fact that there's even an argument for that award just shows how good of a player Colin Simmons was in his true freshman year at Texas. Dawn, it feels like a lot of people are picking Texas to win it all next year. Their win total right now is 9.5 on FanDuel. So I think if you're taking the under on that, you're saying it's going to be a disastrous year for Texas next year, considering how much hype they have going into next year. What is the bottom line? Are you taking the over or under for that win total? And can this team win a national title next year?
I'm over. I'm buying. I'm buying Manning. I'm buying the defense. I'm taking it. I mean, if they're another one, you have I mean, there's tough games here. Ohio State, Florida, Georgia, who they could not beat last year. That's the big hurdle. A&M at the end of the year, but they get them at home. I mean, they got a couple of tough road games. We'll be in Columbus week 1 watching that. That's going to be a fun one. But I'll take the over. I'm going to go with it. I even wonder with them with their schedule, depending on which the losses are, if they would be a 9-3 playoff contender. And even then, I'll take the over. 10-2. This defense, and I'm buying Arch Manning with this. I think personally, they're one of the 2 best teams in the conference. That's where I'm going. I think they make the SEC title game. I think 10-2 is extremely realistic and possibly better than that. We'll find out a lot. Another one, we'll find out a lot week 1 at Ohio State. If they win that game, they're setting themselves up. And even just from not even looking ahead at the numbers, you go, if they walk into Ohio State and win, look out. Yeah. If Arch Manning does that in his first start this season, man.
I'd probably say they're the best team in the SEC right now. It's close between them and Alabama, in my opinion. But that's an easy over for me, too. I don't see any way they go 9-3 next year, unless it's a complete disaster. I think Arch Manning, if he can live up to that last name he's got, Texas has the surrounding talent, both offensively and, more importantly, defensively. They have that kind of talent to win their first national title since Vince Young and the Longhorns did it 20 years ago, 2005.
The one real road to it is that their offense is just so young.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks and receivers, for the most part, and offensive line is that it's just so young that they do trip once or twice. Maybe they lose the Ohio State game, but what can they get it back together over the next month to play the Floridas and the Oklahomas of the world? You're back. It's SEC competition. You got to do this. So that's really the one question. If you had a biggest weakness for me, and you mentioned the offensive line, it's just youth all over their offense.
And it's worth mentioning too. We haven't even talked about it yet. They have a great run game too. Trey Wisner
and CJ Baxter coming back. That might be the biggest thing working to their advantage. And getting injuries in the portal was huge. But Wisner and Baxter, there's not many better pairs than that. That's nice.
I had Texas as the number 3 running back unit in the country, and the only 2 above them were Penn State and Notre Dame, who are pretty clearly the top 2.
Trey Wisner does not get enough credit for what he did.
He had over 1,000 yards last year.
He does not get enough credit for what he did for this team.
He had over 1,000 yards, and he was supposed to be the number 2 running back last year because CJ Baxter was supposed to be the starter, and he went down with a season-ending injury in the preseason. Now Baxter's back, and you have Trey Wisner too. I believe Connor Rogers, Trevor Sikkema did their running backs episode for NFL Stock Exchange. They both had Wisner and Baxter as like 2 of the top 15 or so backs in the draft next year.
Oh, no. What Wisner did last year does not get talked about enough.
Yeah.
Because that could have been a mess in the backfield after Baxter got hurt so early.
We're not spoiling our season predictions yet, but we both agree Texas could compete for a national title next year.
For now, I will spoil at least in the SEC title game.
Okay.
That's as far as I'll go.
But they are a national title contender too, you'll say.
Oh, yeah, contender, sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that leaves some ambiguity. I'm good with that. You wait till August for the hard predictions.
All right.